Okay, so I'm going to show you how to take apart your Xbox 360 wireless controller and how to put it back together. First, you're going to need a T8 Torx. You take off the battery pack, and you're going to have 7 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right underneath the barcode. I already took off the screws, so you're just going to pull off the shell. And remove the board. Rumbler packs go with you. Remove these. And just pull out your buttons. And with your D-pad, you have 2 little screws right here. You have to pull those out in order to take off the D-pad. So you can use a small Phillips, or you can use a very small flathead. Pull out your backing. You can pry it off a little bit if you need a little help. Okay. And on your board, you have 2 triggers. You can pull those off. You're going to want to try to get it off the arm. This part's a little tricky for me. I'm not the one that usually does it. You have springs underneath the triggers. Don't lose those. And your analog sticks, these just pull right off. And on this part, the mic piece, a lot of people tend to break the brackets because they're too rough with it. All you need to do is put the thumbs right here and just gently push. Okay, and that's how you take it apart. To put it back together, you just do the opposite. Put the thumbsticks back on. Put your triggers on. This a little tricky getting it on. Make sure you have the right one on the right side. This long part should hit this long backing right here. And put in the springs. Use a screwdriver to get it over the hump. And push. This part is the tricky part. You're going to want to try to use the screwdriver as kind of a leverage. Just push. spring in. And again, with the arm. Okay. And put these back together. Put your mic piece on. Don't be rough with it. Make sure the holes match. Put your, I would start with the D-pad. Put the backing on. Okay. Make sure your screws don't fall out. Put the front piece on. And screw it back in. This part's a little easier if you have a screwdriver that has a magnetic to it. So to hold the screws. Your buttons back in. Start back buttons. And your guide button. Make sure you have the eclipse going first. If you don't have that, your guide button will fall out. Okay. And lastly, put the LBRB insert in. The reason you put it in last is because when you put in your board, it will prevent the board from sitting correctly. And then you put in the board. Put your rumble packs back in. Now the rumble packs are removable. This white part here, if you pull that out, you can remove the rumble packs if you don't want it. But if you do want it, make sure they're attached. A lot of people tend to forget to put these back in. And I made a boo-boo. Packs. Forgot to put that in. Lay it flush against the buttons. Okay, now put your board back in. backing back on. And then you would just put your screws back in. Don't forget the middle piece. Now, some people, when they change out the shell, like they'll use a hydro dip, something like this. When they put that in, sometimes the thumbsticks will rub against the shell. It's not the shell. It's actually your Microsoft board. Matrix boards tend to have a higher analog stick right here. This can easily be fixed if you take a Dremel tool, maybe even some sandpaper. Just trim it down a hair, and what you're trying to do is create a gap between the end of this and the shell, and it will fix your sticking problem. And that's that.